Hello, everybody. This is Jess from 3D Learning Experts, and you're listening to the LD Experts Podcast, the show for busy parents who want to help their kids with learning disabilities, or as I like to say, learning differences, go from surviving to thriving. Welcome. So today we are talking to my friend Celeste, who I met when I was homeschooling in Las Vegas, and our kids were in the first Lego League robotics team together. And so we got to spend a lot of time with each other while it was 2 years, and the kids met every week. And then as it got closer to the competitions, they'd meet a couple times a week, and us moms would just kind of hang out and chat. So as Celeste mentioned, when I asked her if it was okay to talk about all of her various topics, she said, I have hit the gold mine of unicorn homeschool moms. So as you might be able to see, Celeste is an African-American woman, and she is a lesbian. She was married to a white woman, and before that, a white man. So her son is biracial, and she has only one child. So these are all less common types of lifestyles of your typical homeschool family. So I think it's awesome that we will have an opportunity to learn from Celeste how she navigated through homeschooling her son being maybe a unicorn in the community. Welcome, Celeste.
Thank you. Yeah, it was an interesting ride, I have to say.
How so?
Well, just starting off, I was not sure about homeschooling. I always wanted to, but I wasn't sure whether I personally could do it. The whole mom fear and everything. And then it didn't help. My son's name is Cameron, and I pulled him from regular school in third grade. When the teacher, I told her what I was planning on doing, the teacher actually looked at me and she said, "You're just going to ruin your child." Because
it's shocking and it's sad, but it's not surprising.
Yeah. She had just said, he is such a smart and happy child, and he's an only child. You're not going to socialize him at all. Which I always, I look back at that and I just have to laugh so hard, because we had to sit down and scale back on all the things that we were doing to make sure that he was getting enough time for schooling, especially like what you mentioned with the Lego and then park days and extra homeschooling classes and then everything that Las Vegas has to offer. It can be a lot.
So, do you feel like you ruined him?
No, not at all, actually. I think he turned out great. I think if I had left him in school, it would have kind of ruined him, honestly, because what had pushed me to want to homeschool him had been, as you mentioned, he is a biracial child. And I was worried just as far as how he was going to get along with kids, because with me also being a lesbian, most of the homeschooling at that time was conservative Christians. The teacher herself, I should say, had mentioned how it was just going to ruin him because he wouldn't get socialized. And we ended up having to scale back a whole lot of things to make sure he had time for school. He came out amazing. We had actually decided to homeschool him because he was coming home stressed, almost in tears, mainly because he was, I want to say, more empathetic when he was young, and he would get anxiety from the other kids getting yelled at. Like, the teacher was not fussing at him, but she was fussing at the other kids, and that was stressing him out a lot. So that was really the reason why we had decided, or my ex-wife and I had decided to, it was time to homeschool him, because he wasn't just growing in the school district, and then it was Vegas school district. So.
And what grade was that?
Third grade.
Third grade. And did his father have any concerns or any say in it, or how was that?
He did have some worries, But I sat him down and explained to him how I was doing it, as far as homeschooling him. And I, as you know, I didn't go the route of the traditional homeschooler. I assigned him with online homeschooling classes. So I also was able to still meet with a teacher once a week. And then that way he felt better because he knew that I had someone to go to ask questions and make sure that Cameron was staying on track. And it wasn't just me kind of making it up as I go along. Of course, now I look back and I wish I had done it that way, that it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. And I think honestly, he would have enjoyed it a bit more, because it wasn't like I didn't set up a schedule for him, but things still had to be done every week. And Cameron is very responsible. So we could have been a little bit more lax than what we were.
So I'm glad that you said that you wished you had done it a different way, because most people, when they first start thinking about homeschooling, they really think their only options are a traditional school type of atmosphere, which was not what you were referring to when you said traditional homeschooler.
No.
I want to make that clear to our listeners, right? Your traditional homeschooler in Las Vegas is typically a classical type of homeschooling. That is the most common style in Las Vegas. Not to say that there aren't others, but anyway, what people typically do right off the bat, or they think they need to do, is traditional schooling at home or online homeschooling. And so you raised Cameron and he graduated from an online homeschool program. Mm-hmm. And had you been able to do it again, you wouldn't have put him in that? Why?
No. Because he early on knew that he wanted to become a welder. And so I could have geared a lot more of his schooling to include all of that. Now, that's not to say that we didn't go out on field trips, with, just blacksmithing and homeschooling, with classes, with welding at the fort. But I could have done a bit more of what he was actually studying differently and not been so intent on what a classical schooling would have given you, because it was kind of his education. The core of it was boxed because it was still coming from Clark County. And I would have been able to move things around to where it would have suited his needs more as to what he wanted to become.
And why didn't you choose to leave the virtual school situation at any point?
Because I still was nervous. I still didn't have enough confidence in what I was doing for him when because he knew for sure that, yes, welding was what he wanted at 16. So I did think about it. There was talk between both of my exes now that, should we be doing this? Because actually Cameron's dad's mom was a teacher and she worked for the school district. So I knew that I would have had her there as backup, but I honestly just did not have enough faith in myself that I could do it. And so we kept them in there. And I just made sure that we did a lot of field trips and videos and just talking to people as to what else he wanted to do.
So let's talk a little bit about homeschooling as a Black woman.
Oh, gosh. Well, so it kind of intertwines with being a Black lesbian, because when I was homeschooling, we weren't the pink going towards blue state that we are now. We were deep red. And I had to go through, I want to say 9 different homeschool groups before I was accepted.
As a lesbian or as a Black woman?
Both. Honestly.
Can you separate the two?
Yeah, it's honestly, it's almost hard to separate, because there were some groups that when I received, my email back after asking for acceptance, you got the nicely crouched words that they didn't feel that I would fit in, or no, what was the verbiage? They didn't feel that Cameron would fit in coming from a blended family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then there were a couple of groups so there's the Eagles.
So it's interesting that you said invited. Now, I understand that the Eagles, you needed to be accepted because that was a group through a church. So that was a very structured and formal group. However, I mean, like the co-op that we both kind of were a part of, that wasn't a formal group that you needed to be accepted in, was it?
Well, kind of. I mean, like all of the groups that are there, they do, while they are kind of like a co-op, they still vet the people, like the group that the big group that I ended up going to, the person that ran the group, she actually went to 6 different moms before even speaking with me. Because again, I knew what I was heading for. So when I sent the email to ask to be included into the group, I explained what type of family that Cameron was coming from.
Having an only child, a lot of times people are concerned about their only child spending any time with other children.
Mm-hmm.
Cameron you were are very close friends with a family who raised how many kids? 6 kids?
6. Yeah, 6 kids. And they took us as a family in, and so honestly, Cameron was never alone. And it kind of worked out really nice because his schooling, which him being sympathetic with other people's feelings and noises that were going around, it was nice for it just to be he and I for his schooling time. But then, when it came time where we could do things, he was never by himself. He always had, his best friend was Caleb, which they are 20 days apart, and then of course he had your son, and they kind of glued together, and then just the groups themselves. So he had a lot of extracurricular time with people that he more or less grew up with, but then he still got that one-on-one time as far as education. So I wish that just for a number of reasons that I had another child, because I still felt like he felt like he was missing something, not having a sibling, but it didn't have anything to do with homeschooling because he always had a social, group to hang out in.
I get the being an only child myself, feeling like I missed out on that relationship thing. And I was never homeschooled. So I'm glad that you said it had nothing to do with homeschooling. So would you recommend someone who has only one child to pursue homeschooling?
Most definitely, especially if the child has any kind of issues as far as learning or behavioral or emotional, you wouldn't be able to do better for them than homeschooling them, even with any of those that the child is dealing with, because you can always reach out for assistance with learning just within the homeschool community, because there are so many people with children that just cross the rainbow as to what they're doing, and the moms and dads have been around for years, but yeah, Cameron, I feel, and I would ask him, once he hit 15, I asked him every year, do you want to go to regular school? And he would have on his little robe, and it's 1:00. He's like, no, not at all. I'm not going to wake up at 5:00 in the morning just to go to school when I can sleep in and not have to do schoolwork until 4 or 5, because I was really lax with him. Like I said, he was a really independent little thing. So just as long as he got a certain amount of schoolwork done every day, I was good, and he would make his own schedule. So yeah, most definitely, if you have an only child, I would suggest homeschooling, and then just do like I did and go and join 4 or 5 groups. That way you can get a feel for what fits the mom or dad, whoever's doing the teaching, and then you can get a good fit for the kid too.
Well, and like you said, he didn't start school until afternoon. So you were able to go to all of the social activities because you didn't have to stay home and get his schoolwork done during the times of the field trips and the park days and whatever other activities were going on.
Yeah, exactly. The museums. And then, like I said, I put him in a couple of blacksmithing classes, and, we had Vegas offers a lot of homeschooling classes. Like at that time, and I'm pretty sure that there's some places that do it now, but at that time at the community centers, they were doing science for homeschoolers. The Springs Preserve does a bunch of nature classes for homeschoolers. So, yeah.
And you guys hung out at the Springs Preserve a lot.
Yeah, the Springs Preserve is my favorite, and it was his favorite also because he loves being in nature. So there were a lot of times that we would go to the Springs Preserve and just do schoolwork there, not to mention their regular classes, which is another nice thing about homeschooling in Vegas, because we really don't have bad winters. It doesn't rain here a lot, so you don't have to be stuck at home. You can go to the park, and do your studying there, or the Springs Preserve, or, whatever, take a drive and go into Mount Charleston.
So I've been asking everyone about cost, because that is often a concern of people, is how can they afford it and how can they work? So would you mind sharing about how your family did those things?
So with me and Cameron, I didn't have to worry about cost because of the way that we did our homeschooling. They actually gave us everything that we needed. I already had a computer and printer, so I didn't have to worry about that cost. And now I know that a lot of the online schools, they give you a laptop and computer. And then I didn't mention this earlier, but I was a homeschool nanny for a while too. So I know that things have changed, but with cost, it depends on what you want to do, because there are just so many free educational books and paperwork and such that you can get from the library. There's a lot of websites that offer things for, just a couple of dollars that you can print. There's teachers for teachers.
Teachers pay teachers.
Yeah, thank you. They actually offer a lot, just that site alone, for you to be able to print to where it doesn't cost a lot. So if a family is thinking of homeschooling and, if there's a monetary worry on it, I would say don't let that stop you. There's a lot of resources out there that you would be able to gather for your kid to be able to teach them. And then the homeschool community itself, we, no matter whether the moms are conservatives or liberals or, everywhere in between, every mom is a very giving mom when it comes to a child. And so if they have something extra, or they feel that they can make copies for you, or sometimes they'll just even, if you want a program, they would go, hey, you know what, here's my password and username, log in, and Cameron can use this. So, when it came down to Cameron himself, Vegas as a whole with the homeschool community really stepped up and made him as welcome as they possibly could, I felt or feel.
Awesome. And you mentioned you were a homeschool nanny. What is that?
So I tutored other children that were being homeschooled where the parents were still working, and so they couldn't fit everything in. And then there were a couple of kids that it was more of a mom's assistant, because while I tutored, but I also took the kids to different social events. So that way, they're not stuck at home because mom and dad both have to work during the day. Parents are still, they were still in charge of the education, but I helped.
And it's interesting that you said you tutored other people's kids, but at first you weren't confident in yourself to teach your own child. But then,
right. Yeah. Yeah. Which goes back to that. I wish that I had just had made the leap of just doing it myself, because as time went on and I really saw that Okay, yeah, I could have done this all on my own. I could have gotten everything that he needed to make sure that he's a well-rounded love of debate that he is now, man. And so, again, anyone listening, if you're not sure, just do it because you can. It's not as hard as it seems. And I think that mainly that comes down to whether you have one or five kids, they're your kids. So you know your kids best and what they need and how they're going to learn and how they're going to react.
Absolutely.
So the educational aspect will always fall into place.
Well, and learning can take place so many different ways.
Right.
Like the robotics. The kids were learning how to work together, how to take turns, how to share their ideas, how to create.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a lot in there. And then being in the spotlight, because when they went to the competition, there were eyes on them. So they learned how to speak for themselves to a group, and then how to work under pressure, because it was a huge area with hundreds of people watching everyone, and they still had to build and make sure that their piece was working the way that they wanted them to. So yeah, and you can do robotics in regular schools too, as far as those extra curriculum that schools offer. If you want your child to still do that, as long as there's room in the school that's closest to you, you can always put them in and still homeschool.
Well, that depends on the state.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. So Nevada allows you to allows homeschoolers to participate in non-academic classes. However, other states like California do not allow you to do that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I don't think Texas does either.
I know that Nevada is one of the best homeschooling states to be in.
It actually ranks about in the middle.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
What beats us? Do you know what's
I have a list actually that I have prepared for my 8-week homeschool with confidence. And so I can tell you that. Yeah, I was surprised that Nevada was in the middle.
Yeah, because there's so much for us to be able to do here, and then with the schools letting us in too.
Well, and in Nevada, you only have to file the homeschool affidavit.
Yeah, you just have to send in you just fill out what your plan is and send in the affidavit to let them know that you're going to be homeschooling your child. And
which is a bit more lenient than some of the other states.
That's very true. I know in California, you actually have to have like an umbrella type of a thing.
No, that hasn't been the case for years. It was like that.
Okay, yeah.
You needed to, in California, when I first looked into homeschooling 26 years ago, you needed to have a teacher sign off or a homeschool parent of more than 3 years sign off for you. But the only thing in California you need to do now is a homeschool affidavit. And I'm going to share the screen with you so you can see it, because I think that's easier than me trying to read them all off.
Oh, wow. They consider us as moderate?
Yeah.
That's wild. I knew Texas was lenient and so on going up, but yeah.
So it's all the East Coast states that are the really strict ones, other than Mississippi and Arkansas and Alabama.
Yeah.
Those are Southern.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Alaska is the most lenient.
I've heard that.
Oh, really? I had never heard anything about Alaska.
Yeah, there was a big family that was here, and they moved to Alaska, and she was saying that it's really lenient. I hadn't realized Arizona was lenient, though. That's cool. Or Michigan, too. I'm surprised.
Yeah, and my friend, I forgot I was coaching one of my oldest friends who was from Utah, and so I looked it up for her, and they were lenient, quite lenient. Like all you needed to do was sign out and you were done.
That is cool. Wow.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking time out to share your story about being a homeschool mom.
And all my little hats.
Yeah. Do you have any final things that you want to say?
Just do it. If you're thinking about it, just do it. Jump in. Like I said, your kid best. And I find that most moms and dads love their kids the best and want what's best for them. So they will always do what's best for them. So yeah, just jump.
All right. Thank you, Celeste.